What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is the K24 swapped Civic. In last video we got done doing the fuel system, did a whole return setup, ran the lines, all that, and today we're going to be installing some of the turbo stuff for mock-up. And I think first I'm going to heat wrap all this just so I don't have to do it later on. But yeah, I'm going to get into that now. Well, we got that done. Wish I could say it was fun, but it was not. So, we're going to be installing a 4-bar map sensor from Skunk 2, and we're going to be doing one of the map port plugs because in the factory spot, it's kind of hard to see, but that plug down there needs to get plugged with an actual plug because the little thing that I've jammed in there now isn't going to hold with boost pressure, so. Well, I got the map sensor installed and I got the old map sensor's position spot plugged. Now, I was going to use another plug and plug this hole that's on the throttle body, but the distance between that threaded hole and that isn't the same as what these billet plugs are. So now I have to make something that bolts into that pushes down onto that plug that I was originally using. So I'm going to use this piece of scrap metal and fabricate that now. Basically we're left with this, and I'm just going to round everything out and drill that hole, but I don't know where the bench grinder is, so or bench sander, so we're just going to use this as one. Alright, so that's the final product. I think it came out pretty good for like 20 minutes worth of messing around, but a little rubber plug down in there that just holds it down, whatever, pretty much essentially what that does. Alright, so after the other day, which is the clips you saw last, it seems like this thing's developed a high idle when it gets up to running temp, which kind of leads me to believe that there might be a vacuum leak, so I wasn't sure if it was the little block-off plate I made. I mean, that was one of the main things I changed. Obviously, that isn't going to cause a vacuum leak, I would think. It's got an O-ring and everything, so I ended up ordering a Jack Spania block-off port for that, which is like evap stuff. So I'm going to install that now and see if that changes anything. Well, I got that installed. I think it looks pretty good. It comes extremely close to the map sensor, but it's not hitting it, so it should do. Well, I wasn't going to show this, but I figure this is a big portion of like how to do all this stuff, is what you can delete and what you can move and reuse. And for instance, this bracket right here holds that wire clip, but it also retained the factory fuel lines, which I'm removing, and I want to retain that factory clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut the portion of that bracket off that held the fuel lines, just so the other portion of it is still there and able to retain that little clip there. So, well, there's the little piece I cut off, and that's how it looks now. I don't know about you, but I think that is far cleaner, and it still retains the factory clip. It's a win-win. All right, so now I decided I'm going to just start unbolting this portion of the exhaust that goes up to the header, because I'm going to have to modify all this to be able to fit the new downpipe anyway. So I'm going to remove this in preparation for putting on the turbo manifold and turbo. All right, well, I got the downpipe off. Now I'm going to start taking out all of these header bolts. Well, today's a new day, and today I decided before I put the turbo manifold on, just to make my life easier, that little green thing down there is the factory oil pressure sensor. So I'm going to remove that. And in its place is going to go this oil pressure sensor adapter. So basically it just gives you multiple different ports to tap in for oil pressure. So I'm going to use one of the ports for a turbo feed, one of them for the factory sensor, just because I think the dash will have a light on if I don't have it plugged in. And then I'm going to use the other one for an oil pressure gauge. We're going to Teflon tape all these threads and get into that. All right, so as you can see, I got that in. The turbo feed adapter thing is on the bottom of that. This one is for the gauge. This one is for my factory cluster. But come to find out, the wastegate is going to run into all that, which I kind of figured it was. I knew you had to modify the black coolant pipe, but it runs pretty heavily into the other one too. So I just ordered an aftermarket housing that should tuck that in closer. So all right, so while I'm waiting for the new upper coolant housing to arrive, which should be in a couple days, I have to relocate my battery. And I used to have it. I might have a picture. If I do, I'll put it up where I had it, but it was in a nice spot in the engine bay, but intercooler piping is going to run into that now. So now I have to move it over here to the passenger side wheel well. So pretty much I'm just taking measurements on what I have to do. I just went and bought steel and everything. I'm going to use the tray that I made in the spot in there, and then I'm just going to make little legs that come up and bolt into pre-existing bolt holes there, and then I'll brace it and everything too, just so it's safe. And well, with the help of some CAD, this is about the length I need, so I'm going to cut that off. I have to make 2 of them. Now that I have 2 of them cut to the length that I need, I'm going to use the punch tool and put in my center punch so I can drill out the appropriate size hole. All right, so just for a quick little rundown of how I'm thinking I'm going to do this, I'm going to weld here and here, and then I'm going to weld a long one across here that sticks out to the width of this, and then run cross braces down, and that should be more than strong enough, I would think. All right, so I have that marked where I want to weld it, whatever. I have a clamp at that just to tack it. Couldn't find any vice grips, but we're going to get into time lapse and do all this. All right, so basically this is what we're left with. Don't mind the welds. My good welder got stolen, so this is what I get to deal with, but it's strong. I can step all my weight on it. I'm 150 pounds, so if it can hold 150 pounds, it should be able to hold this 15-pound battery, no problem. Well, here it is all tied in with the battery tie I used to use. And she ain't going anywhere. I was just ripping on it. I even stood on it again. Good to go. Well, here it is with the bumper loosely put on. The other side's just not clipped in is all. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to tell depth, but there's clearance there. Plenty of clearance for the tire. I full clocked it and everything. We don't even get within 2 inches of it, which is sweet. Overall, it's a win. All right, so the next part of this is to hook up the battery leads, obviously. So the ground, I should be able to pivot and ground to the airbag ground spot. That's no big deal, but the positive wire, this won't reach there. So I think I'm just gonna cut this like right here. Just cut this off so this is a bolt together point, and then I can put the end of this new lead that I got, like bolt that into this spot here. I think that's like the safest way I can connect this, because I can try to solder this, but I've tried to solder wires this big before and it just doesn't ever work out good. I'm sure it's just because it's me, but for me, this is going to be the easiest way and safest way for me to do it. I'll bolt it together, I'll E-tape everything, whatever, and I think that's going to be the best option for me. And basically that's what we're left with, which I'm gonna electrical tape all that and tuck it away.
But yeah, that should be plenty long enough to reach over to my battery. And just like that, if it'll focus, it's electrical tape tucked, ground in that spot. I didn't hook that up yet, but now we're on to mounting the intercooler, and I'm just gonna go from that little bracket on it to that hole right there, and just nut and bolt it between there and there. And just like that, it is mounted and centered. Just made that little bracket and that little bracket. Worked out good. I don't even think I'm gonna really have to trim the bumper either, which is cool. Kind of just fits good. Good gap between the radiator, gap between the bumper support. All right, so the new upper coolant housing thing came in, and I can already see the output. That's just pivoted up right now, but the output for that is in significantly closer to the block, which is good. Should give me the distance I need. But one thing I don't like here, let me take it back out. I'll show you what I don't like about this. All right, so I pulled it out real quick, but what I don't like is that there's only two, like the two coolant passages are machined into this and use O-rings to seal. But like this top one right here, that's EGR stuff, so that should be sealed. But on here, there's nothing machined for that. So what am I supposed to, am I supposed to just hammer this thing in silicone, or I don't know. I think they should have just machined this without those O-ring lips. That way you could retain the factory gasket, just so it properly seals. Like this one's an oil passage that goes to nothing. So I have to put some sort of sealant on here to seal it, because if I just tighten this down, it's gonna leak. And I looked, like the K-tuned ones and all those ones do the same thing, so not really a fan of that design, but it is what it is. I'm gonna get into siliconing this up and installing it now. All right, so after putting these O-rings in, this one that comes with the kit fits perfectly fine. This one did not. It was that much too big for the O-ring to fit. It just wouldn't snap in. So I had to cut it and shorten it, which I'm not a fan of, which I'll just put some silicone around that, which is better than the other option, which was just fill that entire groove with silicone. So, well, I just got that installed. Now I'm gonna be doing the heater core hose. And you have to change, I had to change the bottom one because I have to cut this black pipe back like I was saying, and the stock one wouldn't have been long enough. So the part number on that is that, but that'll be able to, that's plenty of length there for me to be able to cut this back where I need to. So I'm gonna do that now. Well, I got the turbo manifold loosely set in there. It definitely still does, the wastegate definitely comes close, obviously, to that pipe, but I'm gonna tie it down lower and everything, and then when I put on this other coolant pipe, I'm gonna tie them both down probably towards the transmission, which will give me more clearance. So I think I'm gonna try doing that now. All right, so I got the turbo just sitting in there, kind of just trying to see what I have for room. Like, I want to move that harness, obviously, tuck it closer to the motor, and I have to see what kind of room I have for the down pipe too. So that's what I'm gonna do now. All right, well, I checked the fitment of the down pipe, and it appears we're gonna have plenty of room, knock on wood. But I started to heat wrap everything. Like, that's the harness that goes all the way up over there. And it's just normal zip tied right now. I have metal zip ties that should be here tomorrow, it says. So all metal zip tie all those, and then the heater core hoses and the harness will be officially wrapped, and I would like to think safe enough to be close to the turbo and manifold. Well, I'm now going to remove the windshield wiper fluid tank because it's going to unfortunately be right in the way of the intercooler piping. So I'm gonna probably find some other tank maybe I can use, like something smaller that sits in a similar spot, because it would be nice to have that. But yeah, I'm gonna rip all that out now. I'm gonna start mocking up intercooler piping, and I just have one of these. It was like $88, I think. I'll try to put a screenshot on the screen of which exact kit I got, but It's just a cheap eBay kit, which is, I mean, whatever, it's aluminum piping. But now I'm just marking these and cutting them where I think I need them. Well, this is where we're leaving off. For today, at least. I'm waiting on a different coupler, but got the blow-off valve, little adapter thing down there, up into the turbo. So we're getting there. We're literally one pipe away because I have a 90 coming for that. So it should give me a pretty good straight shot down to that last coupler, and then all that stuff will be done, which is sick. All right, so my metal zip ties came in, so I can finally replace the ones, the plastic ones or whatever. So I'm gonna get into that, and I'm gonna probably remove the turbo and start working on the turbo drain, because after that, it's all the oiling system for the turbo will be done. So it's probably better to just get that out of the way now. All right, so I ended up getting the turbo drain done, and I just had all this out, put the gasket in, tightened it all down for the final time. What else? Clocked the wastegate, I believe, to where I think I need it. Got the gasket there. Turbo's getting ready to go in. Oh, and had a AN6 fitting, steel fitting welded onto the power steering pump little thing, so I could make my own line, because the factory style one was just running into the turbo manifold. But that is the cleanest option for us TSX and Accord pump people. All right, so I have the turbo drain all hooked up down underneath. I just did a quick look over, and I mean, aside from it being wide open exhaust, I should be able to fire this thing real quick. So I'm going to probably put the GoPro in the engine bay somewhere, look over this thing one more time, and then we're going to fire this thing up and listen to the old spoolie boy. All right, so I ended up just waiting till the next day because it was dark, obviously. So again, I'm going to look over it real quick, and then I'm going to fire this thing up. Well, I'm just checking it over, looking for coolant leaks and everything. That's all old antifreeze, but I don't see any oil leaks. I don't see anything. So I guess I'm going to try to let it warm up and come up to temp and bleed the coolant system. All right, guys. Well, that's probably going to do it for this video. I'm sure it's getting pretty long at this point. All my clamps finally came in, so I'll be able to finish putting in the intercooler piping and everything. Like, it's all just hanging out in here. So next video, I'll probably do blow-off valve stuff. I'm going to have to modify and make a wastegate dump, which I have this, so I'm going to have to modify this to work, because just using that, it runs into everything down there, like the transmission especially, it hits. So I'm going to have to go through and make all that, and I'll end up putting all the exhaust stuff in the next video too. So yeah, look forward to that, guys, and thanks for watching.